Welcome to, or welcome back to, the Agatha May Detective Agency. I'm Agatha May, and in this video, we'll be looking at Reginald Wayne Miller's affidavit that was filed in the 2001 divorce from his first wife, Susan. We'll look at Susan's affidavit next Friday. Let's get started on Reggie's, and buckle up, kids, because it's a doozy. Number 1. I have been married to Susan Miller for 27 very long years. It has been an unhappy marriage for as long as I can remember. We have not slept in the same bedroom for 20 years, even before we separated in February. Oh, Reggie, you simple, addle-brained little man. If you haven't slept in the same bedroom for 20 years, it would have to be before you separated in February. You don't even really have to do any math to figure that one out. But also, yikes, separate bedrooms for 20 years? So they only shared a bedroom for the first 7 years of their marriage. The 27 very long years bit made me laugh, though, so 1 point to Reggie. Number 2. I have had suspicions for a very long time that Susan was having affairs, but her openness about it has brought this to a head. I have found unexplained lingerie and gift baskets from Victoria's Secret. She had a private telephone line put in her bedroom. During the last 2.5 years, she has become obsessed with the internet. She spends hours upon hours online. 1 month last year, she spent 7,533 minutes, which averages out to 30 hours per week. Attached are copies of some of the internet bills, which show the extent of time that she spends, as well as some of her screen names. For example, Oh, I'm Nice, Silk and Satin 8, Oh, Susie Q 42. Lace 4200, etc. It is clear that her conversations on the internet are not of a wholesome nature. Well, little saucy Susan also had the usernames Lacy 2400 and Lace 4100. But maybe Reggie shouldn't have been so judgy. Maybe Susan was just trying to sell some fabric online to help pay the bills. While looking at that bill that Reg mentioned, I noticed another username on there, and I'm pretty sure it was Reggie's. And he went by GloryDad77. Oh my. Also, while looking at Susan's background report the other day, I noticed another AOL account that I'm pretty sure also belonged to Reginald, and that username was Big D Money 007. You know how JP seems to be obsessed with the numbers 300 and 350? Reggie is that way with the number 7. I have found other email addresses and usernames he's had that have the number 7 in them. I really don't want to know what Reg was doing with a username like that. I guess selling fabric to help pay the bills. Number 3. Susan has gone around bragging about her various affairs to people in the community and, most importantly, to people in our church. She had an affair with a man named Rick who was also dating Donna, a member of our church. She admitted to me having an affair with this man for a period of several weeks, meeting him at her sister's condo at Kingston Plantation. Is it technically an affair if it only lasts several weeks, or is that more of a fling? Number 4. She also had an affair with a man named Rich from Connecticut who flew in and met her at the Holiday Inn Express Motel in Murrells Inlet in the summer of 2000. I was at a church dedication in Orlando, Florida that weekend, and returned just before church service on Sunday morning. One of the things I found most offensive was after church, she refused to go out to eat with our family because she said she was going home. As it turned out, she was going to take her boyfriend to the airport. Well, Susan really had a thing about guys named Richard, huh? Does it sound like Reg is more offended by her skipping lunch so she could take Rich to the airport than he was that she was sleeping with him? I guess you gotta draw the line somewhere. Number 5. She made frequent telephone calls to her boyfriend. Attached are copies of some bills showing those calls. She frequently made calls to this man at work, A1 Roofing. He sent her phone cards, so most of her calls would not show up on the bill, but I do have copies of some of those bills which are attached. The calls are highlighted. Number 6. Many times in the past, I considered leaving Susan, but I knew as a pastor I would lose my ministry and my job. However, with her becoming so flagrant in her adultery, even the church has had enough. I am finally at a place where I can keep my job if she will stop trying to stir up so much trouble in the church. Reggie, you owned the church. You weren't going to lose your job. Number 7. The 3 good things that have come out of our marriage are my precious children. John Paul is 22. He lives in Sacristy with his wife and 2 sons. Patrick is 17. He eats lunch and supper at my house 3 to 5 times per week, but has been going to sleep at the former marital residence because his mother says she is afraid to be alone. When I first moved out in February, he moved furniture, his bedroom, to stay with me. When his mother filed this action asking for custody, she decided that he did not need to have a curfew, so Patrick likes to sleep at her house now. He recently got a job at the Conch Cafe, which has helped cut down on the late hours some, but I still have concerns about him living there. Lacey is 10 years old. She's been spending most of her time with me. Her mother picked her up between 5 and 8 p.m. on Sunday evenings, and she stayed each evening through Wednesday night. Susan dropped her off in the mornings about 7 a.m. I fed her breakfast and lunch, then Susan picked her back up again when she got off work. Lacey spent the rest of her time with me. After she filed for custody, she insisted on seeing Lacey more. Until then, I had been having Lacey about 90% of her waking hours. Since then, Susan has had Lacey an additional 1 weekend, 3 Friday nights, and 1 Saturday night. Well, I'm not sure Reggie could have been more confusing with how he worded when Lacey was where. I guess if you can't be smart, you just give him the old amble-ramble, wordy scramble. Number 8. Susan does not get Lacey to school on time when she has her. On the weekends, she likes to go to church with me. She attends Cathedral Hall Academy, which is where I am headmaster, so I see her throughout the school day. When school is out, she is with me because she attends summer camp, sponsored by Cathedral Hall Academy. We are together every day. You just wrote that Susan dropped her off at your place every morning at 7, you goober. How was Susan getting her to school late if you had her every morning? Reggie should have used flowcharts before writing this so he could keep his story straight. Number 9. For the past several years, I have been the only one that ever took care of Lacey and Patrick's needs, including everything from clothes shopping, taking them to their outings and school functions, taking them out meals, and helping with homework. Now that I have my own house, I cook for them. In the last few years, Susan lost interest in the children. She has paid them very little attention. I don't believe you. Also, please tell me you're not trying to help them with their English homework. Number 10. I have been the one who cleaned the house and taken care of home responsibilities. When I moved out in February, Susan just let everything go. In May of 2001, some friends and I went to the house. I was horrified to see just how bad Susan has let it become. Attached are copies of the pictures that were taken on that day. I do not want my children living in this filth. Yes, her house was messy, but why are you going to her house with friends and then taking photos, which included photos of her bedroom, you creeper? Can we all take a moment to recognize Reggie's fabulous photography skills, though? I'm pretty sure he could have sketched clearer pictures, holding the pencil with his toes. Number 11. The children need to have 2 parents. I understand that, and I want that too, but Susan cannot be the primary one to take care of them. If she is, they will not be taken care of. They need hot meals and proper attention. I cannot believe that Susan even really wants them unless she thinks that there is money associated with having them. She has shown so little interest in the last 2 years that her sudden maternal interest is suspicious. Their church life, school life, summer life, and social life are with me. All Susan offers is a few evenings each week. I ask that the court grant me custody. Well, now the time Susan had the children's changed again. Instead of a flowchart, maybe Reggie needs a lie board. It's like a murder board, only with a lot more string. Now that I think of it, with all the porkies that Reggie tells, he'd use so much string he'd end up with a doily. Number 12. Susan and I have been talking about separating for a very long time. Although it is my understanding I'm not required to pay her alimony because of her adultery, I was still willing to pay her some money so that the children would have a decent place to live when they were in her home. I want my children to be taken care of, but nothing I offer is good enough for her. Oh, poor Reg. But isn't it just so Reggie of him to try and be all slick and tell the courts how they should rule on the question of alimony? Number 13. Susan has always done what Susan wanted to do. She is not the least bit concerned about paying our bills. I have explained to her over and over and over again that the way we have been paying the bills is by borrowing more money, and obviously we cannot continue to do that. Our debt is staggering, but she is convinced that I have a money tree in the backyard. I do not. Copies of some of our bills are attached. Some of the bills that Reggie attached were from collection companies, so I'm not sure what bills he was paying with the borrowed money. He also didn't say what Susan was allegedly spending the money on either. I do think that one more "and over" might have convinced me that he actually explained the bill paying to her. Number 14. We cannot afford the house any longer. It has a first and second mortgage on it. The first mortgage is 3 months behind and the second is 2 months behind. If we painted the house and cleaned it up, we could sell it and hopefully pay off the mortgages, but she refuses to move. We had agreed that when the children and I moved into an affordable townhouse, she would move out so we could sell the residence before it went into foreclosure. In consideration, I agreed to pay her first couple of months' rent on an apartment. But after I moved, she refused to move unless I paid her an outlandish amount of money each month. She is using the threat of foreclosure to try to force me to pay her money I simply do not have. The most important thing is that we do something to eliminate the 2 mortgages before foreclosure. This is the prime reason for selling it. I ask that the court order Susan to move and put the house up for sale. She has already located an apartment at Land's End for $650 a month, which includes electricity. It is much more in keeping with our financial ability. We are going to lose our house, which is our only asset, if we do not do something immediately. Reggie received a housing allowance from the church, which is typical for churches that don't own a parsonage. Was he not using his housing allowance to pay the mortgage? And if Susan was refusing to move out of the house, why had she located an apartment to rent? Number 15. I also asked that the court order Susan to stop incurring any more debt for which I might be held responsible. She has no concept of money. For example, she refuses to keep a running balance in the checking account. Because she does not know how much money there is in the bank, she writes bad checks frequently and even signs my name. As a result, we have overdraft fees to pay. Attached is the bank statement for September and October, showing $782 in overdraft fees. In 1999, she cost me nearly $5,000 in overdraft fees. Several months ago, I put an ad in the paper saying that I would no longer be responsible for her debts. Copy attached. Frankly, I was hoping that would protect me legally, but also I was hoping that it would shake her up and make her realize how precarious our financial situation is. But it has not changed a thing. She had $2,000 worth of dental work done and charged it to my dental card. I cannot believe she would incur that kind of expense, knowing that our marriage was crumbling and the house was headed towards foreclosure. I have borrowed out. I ask that the court not allow her to incur any more debt. After we separated, Susan sold the dining room suite and the master bedroom suite. I also ask that the court not allow her to dispose of any marital assets unless we both consent. We do not have much, but we lose what we do have otherwise. Once again, poor Reggie. It is sad that his teensy brain couldn't have figured out that all he needed to do was just open a new bank account without Susan being on it and having access to the checks. And speaking of that, why would she need to sign his name if she was already a signer on the account? Something is literally not adding up. I'll bet Susan's teeth looked fabulous, though. Number 16. By way of explanation on my financial declaration, I have a gross salary of $1,000 per week. In addition to that, I receive a housing allowance of up to $1,100 per month and a utilities allowance of up to $400 a month. I only receive reimbursement for what I actually use. That means that I do not use the complete housing allowance because my total monthly rent is $930. Some months I have utility bills that are higher than $400 and some months are less. I do not receive the excess. To give an accurate picture, I have not put these reimbursements on my financial declaration, but neither have I included these expenses. Also, I am considered self-employed for tax purposes. My paycheck stub does not show a withholding for FICA because I have to pay those taxes in estimated quarterly payments. So Reggie earned up to $70,000 per year, including his housing allowance, and that's over $124,000 in today's money. The cost of living for Myrtle Beach is actually 7% lower than the national average. So where was his money going? Number 17. Susan is so bitter and angry for reasons known only to her that she has tried to destroy me at every turn. She stirs up strife in the church that I pastor. She spreads malicious lies about me. Her frequent threat is, I'll ruin you and your ministry. She is just about to do it. Attendance and contributions are down, much of which can be directly attributed to her efforts to discredit me and my ministry. Our private life should stay private. She does not need to be dragging this into my workplace. She hurts not only me, but she hurts the children and herself by doing so. She has promised to do many things along the way, including moving out of the house by the end of February so that we could sell it, but then she backs out. She has threatened me repeatedly. She comes to my townhouse and just walks in anytime she wants to. She gets drinks out of my refrigerator, takes a sip, and puts them on the counter. She is doing everything she can to antagonize me. I put a private phone line in Lacey's room just so she could check on her without having to talk to me. I do not want this woman around me, and I do not want her trying to destroy my ministry and therefore my livelihood with her malicious ways. I ask that the court restrain her from coming about me and from interfering with my work. Well, leave it to Reggie to include that statement about drinks in a divorce affidavit. I like to imagine Susan waltzing into Reggie's place, wearing a chiffon nightgown and robe with feather trim, opening the fridge, grabbing a drink, taking a teensy sip, and then slowly placing it on the counter, all while maintaining intense eye contact with Reggie. And if Susan was just able to walk in his townhouse anytime she wanted, he must have had the only townhouse in Myrtle Beach that didn't have locks on the doors. Number 18. Things between us rose to a crescendo in May. Susan had been tormenting me and showing no remorse for her affairs. In a fit of frustration and pain, I wrote her a mean letter and used the same words and language to her that she had used describing her relationship with those other men to me. I had hoped that the vulgar language would shock her into reality of the lifestyle that she had been living and the pain and suffering she had inflicted on me with her bragging about the affairs even to other ministers. I regret having done that. I wish I had just written a letter and torn it up. But I do not think that a momentary lapse in judgment should offset more than 20 years of faithfulness and care. Well, kudos to Reggie for using a dirty letter as an emotional defibrillator. I'm so glad it didn't have anything to do with him being angry, and especially not being angrier about the effects that the affairs had on his church and schools more than the actual affairs. Unfortunately, his salty letter was not included in the stack of divorce paperwork. Number 19. I do not know what Susan thinks she has on me. She has made all these claims about me having property that I do not have. I need discovery to prepare for trial. I ask that the court grant it to me. Well, it would be interesting to know what property she claimed Reggie had, and I'm going to meander over to the Register of Deeds website for Horry County soon and see what I can find. Maybe that money tree was growing on his alleged secret property. Number 20. Susan's request for alimony is ludicrous, considering her flagrant adultery and the fact that we're facing foreclosure on our house. There's no money to pay alimony even if she were entitled to it. Susan has told me repeatedly that the church that employs me will have to support her. That is a figment of her imagination. I am going to have to take a salary reduction if things do not get better soon. Attached is a copy of a warning that I received from my employer, warning about the financial consequences of Susan's behavior. For her to think that the church is going to support her is ridiculous, and I certainly cannot support her. It is all I can do to try to pay our most urgent bills. Since we have been married, she has attended 1 year at Florence Darlington Tech and 4 years at Horry Georgetown Tech, and she had over 2 years at Winthrop University before we were married. Susan could work if she wanted to, she just doesn't want to. So between statements 7 and 20, Reggie forgot that he had already mentioned that Susan picked up Lacey from his house after she got off work. Susan's employment status sounds like Schrodinger's cat. I sometimes think that Reggie's left ear can't hear what the right side of his mouth is saying and vice versa. Number 21. My employer owns 3 vehicles which they let my family and me drive. Susan drives a Contour automobile. The trustees told me that they are willing to allow her to continue to drive it only on a temporary basis. The church also covers the insurance. So Reggie not only had his house and utilities taken care of by the church, also his family cars and car insurance. So where was that money going besides Susan's fabulous teeth? And finally, number 22. Although I asked for child support and attorney's fees in my motion, I would rather that the court order Susan to pay some debts so that we can avoid forced bankruptcy by a creditor. I ask that the issues of child support and attorney's fees be determined at the final hearing. Well, sadly, Reg did have to file bankruptcy, and Susan, however, did not. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, join, comment, stand on your head, and all the other things that will help my channel grow. Until next time, stay safe and be happy.